Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and I've just found one of the newer, it's not so new I think at this point, but newer, Godzilla x Kong the New Empire figures from Playmates. You can see this is the Battle Roar Shimo. I've been wondering where the heck this one was for quite some time. I had heard people saying they found it, but it just was not showing up anywhere in my area until just the other day. I just randomly went to Target and then found it while I was just kind of walking through the aisle and was so shocked to find this, as well as the giant Mothra, which I will do a review of if you guys want. I have had a few people request it, but that one's been out for a little while now as well, so I don't know how interested people would be of a review, but I'll definitely put one up if you guys would like to see one. But you can see again, the Battle Roar Shimo looks pretty cool. I actually am a pretty big fan of Shimo as a whole. I think he's one of the cooler looking legendary kaiju that they've created. You can see the packaging looks pretty much as it usually does, or at least as it usually did when it comes to these Playmates releases. They've now kind of revamped the packaging for the newer figures, but you can see here on the back all four of the Battle Roar figures that are out in the line, which obviously we can see is Kong, Scar King, Shimo, and Godzilla Evolved. So let's pop this out of the box and check it out. So here is our Battle Roar Shimo, and I will say it's pretty nice looking actually. I do definitely notice some differences on this one compared to the previously released Shimo figures. I think the majority of the sculpt is probably the same as far as the detail goes, but I will say one thing, like the scale detail and stuff here on the side of the figure definitely looks more vibrant compared to some of the older ones. One thing that is a little bit of a downside for this figure, though, is it does lack neck articulation, which we can see there isn't any sort of neck articulation. And what's also weird is one thing you would expect when it comes to not having neck articulation, you would expect it to kind of include all of the detail that you would see right here, but there are actually some scoots that kind of move down along the neck of Shimo that I don't see on this version, which is a little bit different from the standard versions we've had. As far as the head sculpt goes, though, you can see the head sculpt. There we go. I was going to say if my camera focuses. You can see the head sculpt looks pretty good. Definitely looks like Shimo. We've got a really cool blue eye, which I definitely quite like. We, of course, do have an articulated jaw, but that's also part of the action feature. We have the tongue, painted in there and sculpted out, painted with a pinkish tone. The teeth are okay looking, but they're definitely a little jumbled as far as the paintwork goes. It's kind of just like sloppy yellowish paint all over the place. Like up here on the top jaw, you can see some of the areas where there aren't even teeth ended up with that yellowish coloration, so it does look a little ugly as far as that goes. You, of course, have some pretty decent detail as you move up into the top of the head, and then we also have those very cool kind of crystal-like spines that move along the back of Shimo. They are, again, purple and do have a nice translucency to them, something we've seen quite a bit when it comes to these Playmates figures. As you move down through the body, of course, you basically only have this white tone, this very bright white that also, again, is pretty reminiscent to Shimo. I think the only thing it really could have used would have been maybe a satin shine with a little iridescence, because that's kind of what you see on Shimo. Definitely would have been a nice touch, but it is what it is. As you move down into the legs, you do have leg articulation, of course, forward and back. Some of the figures have had the ability to move their legs out away from the body. This one does not. But as you move down through the leg, you can see again all of the fairly impressive skin texture. Again, it looks pretty decent overall. One thing that is pretty cool, though, is the articulation here in the wrists. You can actually now articulate the wrist down and up, which is something that I'm not sure any of them had prior to this that I recall. But we also have some nicely painted nails, painted with a black. That, as well as something that you didn't see too often. At least I know on the Shimo I have off to the side here, which is the Walmart exclusive kind of weirder paint variant. It does not have painted nails and does not also have this wrist articulation, so definitely something a little bit different compared to some of the others. As you move back along, you can see screw holes and stuff, but they are at least contained to the underside. Unfortunately, there is so many. You can see 3 leading down from the throat into the chest. You can see 2 more here off to the sides, as well as the area where the sound escapes from. Then you have the battery compartment, and then 3 more screw holes. So there are a ton of those on the figure, unfortunately. But as you move back, you can see again the skin detail looks pretty decent throughout the course of the figure. We can also see again the kind of scoots and stuff moving down the rear leg. Again, the leg articulation is basically just forward and back. That's about as far forward as it goes. That's about as far back as it goes, but again, in the ankle, we have the ability to kind of move the ankle forward and back, which definitely helps to create some pretty cool, walking poses and stuff for Shimo, which is fun. It'll definitely give you the opportunity to kind of display this one a little differently compared to some of the others. We do again have the nail paint, which is pretty decent, and it does have a gloss coat for the nails, so that's nice. As you move back into the tail, you can see the tail now curves toward Shimo's right, and I think a lot of the figures previously had the tail curving toward the left, so they've kind of mirrored it now. We do, of course, have the ability to articulate left and right and up and down and swivel, so you have all sorts of articulation out there for the tail. But of course, it's not flexible really or anything. I mean, like, you could maybe bend it a little bit, but it's not like a wire tail or something you can pose. But you can see, again, we have the purplish tone moving over the top out there into the end of the tail. And then when we look at the figure from the opposing side, for the most part, it's going to look the same outside of the positioning of the legs, except for, of course, the big button here for our Battle Roar aspect. But obviously, these very cool translucent spines do end as we lead into the tail, and then it's just basically paintwork moving out into the tail. But it does look pretty cool. Definitely a neat looking Shimo. You have some nice detail even on the undersides of the feet, and then of course like some softer looking kind of scoots moving along the underside. But I'm very intrigued to hear the noises, so let's go ahead and give that a shot. Wow, those were really weird noises. I was not prepared for that. Also, the jaw got stuck. So every time I open this, you can see the jaw kind of gets stuck there. I have to give it a little tap to go closed. Okay, so that's what I was trying to... Now this one's going to go for a while. Was just trying to decipher if there were more than the two different noises. It seems like it's only two noises, unfortunately, but still pretty cool. I actually kind of like the noises of Shimo, if that in fact is the noise. I don't really remember Shimo making that noise, that louder one, in the film. I mean, not saying that it didn't happen. Maybe I just need to watch the movie again, but I feel like if it had made more of those noises, it actually would have been pretty creepy. But as far as a size goes, this is definitely like mid-sized. It's obviously not as large as the giant Shimo, but not as small as your standard Shimo figures. So lengthwise around 11 inches or about 28 centimeters. And then for a height, the highest point is probably the spines here on the back. You're looking at about 5 3/4 inches or just a hair under 15 centimeters. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, Robert Muldoon, and the Collect A human being next to our Battle Roar Shimo, and you can see the figure is fairly decent in size, definitely not a small Shimo, and absolutely one of the larger versions that Playmates has put out. And to show you that, we have the Battle Roar version next to the kind of standard size range. Obviously, this is the alternate paint variant from Walmart, but it's the same size range as the standard smaller figures from Playmates, so you can very clearly see again that the Battle Roar version definitely has some decent size on the, standard sized figures. I think that's probably the only real comparison we really need, just to kind of show you that this version of Shimo is a bit larger than your usual versions. So again, anytime I see a Shimo figure, I'm pretty psyched. I really quite like this kaiju, and as time goes on, it kind of grows on me more and more. I'm just becoming a bigger fan of it as days go by, but I really quite like this version as well. Again, there are some things that Playmates could have done to maybe improve the figure a little bit, but for the most part, I think it's really well done. Some of the detail is really vibrant, even more vibrant than we've seen on some of the previously released figures, but then some areas on the figure, the detail becomes a little muted, like in the neck and the shoulder area. It becomes a bit more muted than we've seen on some of the others, where it's a little more vibrant on some of the others, but then when you move further into the body, the detail looks better. So it's kind of like a mixed bag as far as that goes. The pose is pretty much the standard. There's nothing too crazy as far as that goes. It's pretty close to the way that the others have been posed, except for the tail turning the opposite direction. The paintwork as well isn't really anything to rave about, because there's not really a whole lot when it comes to Shimo. I think if they would have just applied some form of like an iridescence, kind of like the way we've seen some of the captives figures, where they have like those crazy special color variants that shine. If they would have done something like that with this Shimo, it could have looked really cool, because you do see that on Shimo in the film. He has kind of like a weird shine, like almost an iridescence to him, so it would have been neat to see that. But again, it does have some fun articulation, nothing over the top, but I do really quite like the articulation in the wrists and ankles. We do of course have the battle roar aspect to it, and it does have some pretty fun noises. Again, I don't like the fact that the button is kind of sticking out from the side so far. I feel like that's not really necessary and does make the figure look a little ugly, but it's not the end of the world. And at this point, you know, this far into these Battle Roar figures, you kind of expect it, because that's how it's been the whole way through. So if you want this figure, I would say head to your local Target or Walmart. I haven't seen it at Walmart yet, but I can't see them not having it in some places. Just my area doesn't get it for some reason. But when it comes to this figure, I did find it at Target. So check at Target, and you know, if you can find it, pick it up. And of course, like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.